All right, it says I'm live. So, hello everybody. I just finished working on this project and I've had a lot of people kind of curious about it. So, I thought I'd come on since Mary said she was not going to come on tonight. So, hello, here I am. And the computer is about halfway across the room. So, I may or may not be able to see the chat, but I thought I could explain what I've done here. Okay. Um, I'm not going to show you this whole project. I'm going to show you how to make the components to make anything you want out of this. Okay. So I'm going to set this aside. And what you need is just some lightweight paper. And I just have some old notebook paper. And I've cut this into 3.5-inch squares. And I'm going to do 4 of them. And then we can make a block out of those. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to take our scraps, like I have here, from Project Dress a Girl, and I'm just going to randomly grab a scrap out, and we're going to build these blocks. I'll need a pair of scissors just to cut things smaller when needed. So I'll get my scissors out here. So the very first thing you do is you grab a piece of fabric. It can be any of the fabrics. You don't have to do any major searching or anything. I do have my little iron plugged in because these are all wadded up in this bag. And I'm just going to iron this to get it kind of flat again. I might cut this one in half. And the first piece always goes right side up. So like this. We'll just do it like this. And I usually have my first one start so that like one corner of whatever scrap I have goes from one side to another. Doesn't matter which direction, doesn't matter which shape, nothing. All this is a grab and go technique. So that's what we're going to do. You just grab pieces. And I'm just going to kind of cut these so they have some straight lines. And even that's not as important as a lot of people think when it comes to these scrappy blocks. So let's say we'll put that one there. I'm going to put the first piece on each one so you can see how it goes. Hi, Pam. I see you've popped in. I haven't been able to watch anybody's videos today because I've been working on this. It's going to be a candle mat now, the round thing I made, because it's just not quite big enough for a bag. It won't gather up enough. So I've got some more fabrics here. Now, Ann did this with me yesterday in Craft and Chat. And if Ann can do it, anybody can do it. All right, so that's our first pieces on each one. You can put as many pieces as you want on it if you want to, not do quite as many. And what we're going to do is we're going to get another piece. I'm trying to get different fabrics. So I'll just reach into my bag and give it a shake and see what I come up with. Cutting these tails off here and there. And I got to iron that one. Just keep in mind, I got my irons off to the side over here. All right, so here's this one. Now this one's going to go face down. And just put it so it goes from one edge to the other. We'll see how these develop. All right. And what we'll do is I'm going to sew 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of the one that's the most straight here. And what I do is I use my presser foot on my sewing machine over here as my guide. So I'll just start feeding these through. And you sew through the paper too. So get it so that the paper's going through the machine too. And then you just sew it. All right. Now let's get another piece to go with one of these other ones. If I get a piece that's way big, I cut it down a little bit. The key is you want to make sure your seam goes all the way across to wherever you're going. I want to cut that the edging off, the selvage. I want to cut the selvage off. All right, so let's put this one with this one. You just kind of lay them on top of each other, pick the paper up in both fabrics. Then we'll sew 1/4 inch away from this one. This is how I chain piece. And then we'll grab another one. Sorry, I can't really see the chat very well from where I'm at here. Let's see what we've got here. This is a little shorty piece. Let me show you what to do. If you come up with a piece in your hand that's shorter, go ahead and move this over some and then match this up to your piece. And then you're only going to sew from the edge to the end of this, and then you'll stop. Oh, you can't see. Hang on. All right, so now I've got some shorter pieces, and you notice it doesn't come all the way over here. As long as you keep doing it across this way, don't worry about this edge. Don't try to cover this until we get this entire area here clear, because you want your pieces to overlap. In fact, I might need to move up so that this piece will cover this corner. All right, and as we go, I'll show you how that develops. And with this one, you'll have to pull your chain of fabric through a little bit farther, you know, so that you're not going from one piece to the next. And we're going to just sew till you run out of fabric. And then I'm going to make sure my taker up thing is, my thread has come out of the first thing down here. And then as long as your presser foot is up and your take up is up, all the way up, then you can pull your thread. And I've messed it up, so I got to go down and then back up again. There you go. Now that's pretty good. All right, so let me get another piece of fabric. We'll lay this one on top of this one. I'm not going to worry about that selvage because I just want to get through here. All right. All right. And then just clip them apart. Don't cut your paper, just the thread that's in between each block. Let me get you guys back over here. Not going to learn anything unless you're over here where I'm showing stuff. All right, so we got the thread cut. Now, you're going to take each one of these and you're going to just open the one that was on top, and then you can finger press it with your thumbnail. I'm going to take it to my iron. Don't worry that I haven't covered this corner. We can take care of that later. All right, so now we're going to keep going this way. Let's grab some of these zebras. I can get this other piece of fabric to let go. And see, this is a pretty big piece. So what I'll do is I'll just take and kind of eyeball it here. Give this an iron. And we'll lay it down here. And we'll sew it. I call this grab and go piecing, because you don't have to think about it. You just grab something out of the bag, get a piece about the same length, and go for it. All right, next piece, you're going to do the same thing, except we got to get rid of this thread that's sticking off here. All right, we'll open this up and then we'll press it here. I could get my phone and bring you guys over here so I can see chat. I can do that. Now see how this one's got a little niche out of the fabric? I'll just match this and come across and just leave the extra little bit. It won't affect the block at all. I'll show you what I mean. And this is a great way to use up scraps. I know Ann was having a big time using up her scraps yesterday. She said it was a lot of fun. All right, and I'm going to iron my scrap just so it's easier to sew. And then I'll line it up with that edge. And I'm going to come back away from where it's kind of hairy over here. And then I'll just do a 1/4 inch from this edge here. Open this one up, give it a good press over here. Now with this one, we're only going to sew this bit here. Okay, we're not going to try to come all the way across. We'll deal with this last. All right, we'll do some digging, get a different scrap. Ooh, there's one we've not used yet. Let's see if that one's long enough. I think it is. Just give it a press. And then we'll lay it down here so it's the same length as what's already here. And everything that's hanging off from the paper will be trimmed away. I need to move my needle up out of the fabric so I can pull and get to the back. And remember, I'm only going to sew to the end of the fabric. All right, now pull it up out of there. And back some. And then we've got to turn this one. And I'm going to give it a good press over here. And it all depends on what fabrics you have. Let's see. We need a nice long strip. So just grab one. Let's see. That one's not quite long enough. Is this one long enough? Nope, not quite. I've got all sizes here. Let's see, this one should work. And we'll give it a press. All right. Oop. Throw that back in the scrap bag. Put this down, and I've got some selvage here. So it's got a little bit of furriness to it. So I'll come back away from that a little edge. And I'll do a 1/4 inch from the side of my presser foot right along the butterflies. If you want to keep the chain going on your machine so that you're not using an absolute ton of thread, you can just leave the last one under the presser foot and start working with these again. So now we're going to open this up. I didn't realize it. I used 2 of the same fabric, but that's okay too. All right, let's give it a press and I'll show you what I've got. All right, if you look, you can see where your paper is still exposed, okay? I'll read chat when I get done over here. I just can't see you guys. So I've got a little bit of a corner here. I've got a corner here and a corner here. So you just lay a piece of fabric down and we'll use, I got different ones here. There's one and we'll use this green one. Now let me press these real quick. I'll just get some scraps ready for this block to finish it off. So we'll do this one first, this little short one. And if you want more of the butterfly fabric to show, just come back a ways, and it doesn't matter how you lay it on here. You can lay it up to match that edge. You can come back farther so that it covers more. And we can trim this away here in a minute. So I'm going to do that, and I'll show you what that does for you. I'm going to go through the rest of these. Okay, this one's folded back here. Now this one I've got where I cut a notch and there's a little cut in the fabric. So I just want to make sure the next fabric covers that, because you don't want any raw edges on the top of your block. So we can use even a skinny piece like this, but we can come down below that cut in the fabric and just sew it on like that. We'll do some trimming on the excess fabrics here in just a little bit. All right, so we'll do this one. Press this over. I want to save those three because I've already picked them for that other block. And this one, we've got a haggard looking edging here, but you can just put one straight across and stop at the end of the fabric like this. So this would go on here. I might back it up just a little bit. And then we'll sew from the side of the apple fabric. Okay. And you really only have to sew where the paper is, okay? So you can ignore all the fabric that's hanging off. You just need a seam on the fabric. And that one we can come all the way across. Let me get back to my first one again here that we just started sewing, where we had all the little corners. So bend your fabric down at the back, fold it near that seam allowance, and you can cut the excess of that other fabric off just like that. And see, now this will fold up and cover that corner just like that. Now we'll choose another corner. Say we want to do this one, we could bring it down here. And we'll sew from the edge of the green. And remember, you only have to sew where the paper is. And this one, I'm going to fold the paper back toward the back. You fold it over, then you can trim your butterfly fabric even with the other butterfly fabric. Okay, then fold your paper back up and fold your strip of fabric over. There's only going to be a tiny little bit of this blue showing on this one. Now we need to cover up the rest of this corner. We could use some of that zebra fabric. I have big pieces of it. Oh, here's something we got a big piece of. Let's see here. All right. I'm going to take a break and real quick and grab my phone. I feel like y'all are missing chatting with me. And then we'll sew that together. Where's my phone? I'll pick that up. Good evening, everybody. I hope y'all don't mind me popping on. Mary said she was too tired to come on tonight. So I figured I would go ahead and come on since so many of you have shown interest in my Instagram posts about this project today. So that is why I'm on right this minute. There I am. I'm going to turn this phone way down. Let's see if I can get you guys up here where I can see. Okay, so hi, Susan, Gerald. Hi, Ann. And Beth and Allie and Dana. Dana's not feeling good. Got to put some positive energy up for her. Hi, Marty. Yes, I am doing squares. They will be squares when I get there. And Anne had a lot of fun doing the squares. And I learned these are called crumb blocks. You're using all your little bits of crumbs. So now I can see you guys. All right, I'm going to go ahead and sew this one. I got to move this other one out of the way a little bit. So now I can see you. We've got this one here. Poor little thing's been sitting here ignored. I'm sorry about my scissors making all that noise. All right, my zebra is not going to quite cover the corner, so I'll have to put a little bit of something there on the end. And I'll probably come back some so that I have some of this blue showing. It's really not enough to matter because this little bit will be in a seam, but I just like to make it look like I did it on purpose. If you try to pull your thread with your machine in the wrong needle position, it'll break off. It could damage your tension in the bottom. So always do it when the uptake, this is your uptake right here. This that you go through the tensioner and you go through your uptake up here. Have it all the way up at the top when you try to pull the thread away from the needle. So let's sew this one. Let's reach back here and see what we got left to do on these three. Bits and bob scraps. Yep. So let's see what we've got one at a time. All right. This one doesn't need anything else. I'll press this good. So that one's ready for the next step. So I'm just going to set it aside over here. And this is our one we're doing with pieces where we have this whole side here. So now we're going to turn it and we're going to add a strip that goes this way. Here we go. Here's something. Now this one has some selvage on it that I want to trim away. Not really necessary, but I want to. All right, so we'll put this on here. And you just make sure that all of these fabrics and this fabric, you've got them all covered with the next one you're putting on. It doesn't matter if it's a little uneven or anything. You probably didn't see what I was saying there. So just make sure these are even. And this one is covering each of them. If it's a little wavy back in the back, that doesn't matter. All right, so then we're going to sew this one. Okay, then we'll do this one again here. Push this back. If you wanted to, you could fold your paper back, but I've actually stitched through it, so I'm just not going to worry about all that extra fabric. It'll just be more density in the block. Because I had not planned on the corners being naked. And that corner is covered. That corner is covered. I just need to do a little bit of something here to cover this up. And again, I'll sew on the edge of the strawberry fabric. I think this is going to cover all four of them. We'll see. One at a time. right, so this one will fold back. So you can see the whole square is covered now, right? Let's see about these other two. Don't worry about anything that's hanging off just yet. We'll get there. Then we're going to fold this back. I still have a corner to cover. And yeah, Anne's using composition notebook paper, but any notebook paper, loose leaf notebook paper would work too. You don't want to use index cards. They're too hard to pull apart because we're going to eventually rip the paper off. But the paper is there. I guess I should mention this. The paper is there to stabilize the bias edges. Some of your fabric will have bias edges. And what bias is when threads are on a loom, they all go in lines, right? And then you have lines across, okay? A bias is when it goes diagonally across those threads. That's your bias. You can do it without paper, but I'm doing it so I have paper I can cut to, either use a pair of scissors to cut to the size of the paper. I just prefer using the paper for stability. When cutting quilt squares out of yardage, should I cut straight of grain or is it? Yes, your squares should really be straight of grain in a quilt. If you cut on the diagonal, which you will have diagonals when you're doing half square triangles, and that's where it's very important not to stretch your fabric as you sew, because if you stretch it on the bias, when you get to the quilting part of your quilt and you've stretched the bias on all your blocks, when you try to quilt it, it's going to be very difficult because the surface of your quilt will be like the ocean and it'll have big waves up and down in it because the bias is stretched and the fabric won't lay flat. That's why bias sewing should be a secondary step in quilting. Everybody should start quilting with cutting straight on grain and doing like 9 patch blocks, which are just 3 rows of 3 squares. Okay. Save your triangles until you can sew straight lines really well. And then go ahead and jump into the half square triangles. There are ways to do those to help with the stability of it. We can go over sewing triangles another day. Yeah, and there's the old-fashioned pull the thread to find your straight of grain. I usually just iron. Uh-oh, my thread broke. I usually just iron my fabric really well, and then I just hang it, the 2 layers together and hold it up until it lays smooth and the edges are even. That's hard to explain. I'd have to show you how to do that one day. Oh, this one goes in from the side, not the front. This sewing machine was my high school graduation gift from my Uncle Charlie. This is from 1982. This is a dressmaker machine. I don't think they make them anymore. So let's try this again here. All right, let's see. What do we got here? All right, this one I'm going to do the whole fold the paper back at the back and then trim some of the zebras away. I didn't do this in my one I did yesterday. I just kept going. I was going so fast. Janice JL told me I needed to slow down because I wasn't going to have any squares left to show Ann how to do it because Ann was off playing cards. All right, so now I got the 2 little corners here that I need to cover. Just a little one there. And if you wanted to, you could trim some of this zebra away if it makes you happy. Just don't cut your paper. Let's see, what do I got? Here's a little piece big enough to cover that. And when I go to put them together, I'll probably lose all that green unless I come back a little ways further, like that. I'm kind of a ways from my machine, so it's hard to reach it. All right, we've got one more corner on that one to cover. And then I'll show you how to turn them into squares. All right. I've used the same fabrics in 2 of the blocks. I usually try to focus on making them very scrappy, but I do multiple blocks at one time. Just so I can save thread. Then I got one more corner over here. And these are all the fabrics from Project Dress a Girl down in here. Here's some of the birdie fabric. Let's iron that smooth. And now we'll trim them into our squares. Let's stick it so that birdie's peeking out at the corner. That could be cute. And as I said earlier, you can put as many pieces as you want. You will notice that if you put them too close together, you'll end up with what's exposed not being very visible. How does that didn't sound right? By the time you take a seam out, there's not as much going to be exposed. And I'll probably lose most of this little bird. His face won't even be on it. And I'm sorry the desk makes so much noise, but it is what it is. Let me put this one over here and iron it. This tray slides out from this desk, and that's why it's noisy. And I use the same fabric on that one. So these aren't quite as scrappy as the ones I did yesterday. So now we want to make them into squares. And I like to use my quilting rulers because I have them. All right. And you can line it up with the edge of your square. Like so. And we'll just trim, and now throw that back in the bag. Like so. And turn the whole shebang around. And these are supposed to be 3.5 inches square. And sometimes the piece of paper, you just got to make sure everything is at 3.5 here. And those are all going back in the scrap bag. Let's see. Until they're dust. So there's one 3.5 inch square there. So let's keep trimming them. I'll put that one up on the sewing machine. And we'll bring this one over and flip it over so that the paper's up. And again, supposed to end up with a 3.5 inch block. Putting a new blade on here is really quite nice. It cuts nice and smooth. And spin it again. You could sit and just make a whole bunch of these blocks and put them in a box and work on them a little bit at a time. And by the time you sewed a bunch of cotton down, it wouldn't be long until you had enough 3.5 inch blocks to make a blanket. Now see, I felt that shift. I need some new sandpaper dots for my rulers. You put that on the list. All right, so here's my next 3.5 inch block. You're at a quilt retreat doing the same thing. Oh, that's so fun. I have never been to a quilt retreat, but I would love to go someday. But I'm not in a guild or anything. I just do my thing at home. When I started making that, what I thought was going to be a bag, I need to make a lot more of these to do a bag because I really do need a huge circle to make the project bag I have in mind. So I decided to turn what I'd made yesterday in Anne's room into just a candle mat. You know, you can put a glass tray on it with a candle on it. It'd be country cozy. I think that's an actual, used to be a decorating style, comfy cozy. I think now they call it barn something, or I don't know. Everything changes and comes back the same. You didn't think to use your ruler? Yeah. Yep, this is an OmniGrid ruler, and this is a Dollar Tree mat, cutting mat. I got it Dollar Tree of all places. Paid $1 for it, back when they still were $1. Now see, I got a bunch of little strips along here, so it'll make it kind of bulky to sew the seams together, but I'll still manage it. My old girl here, she sews through everything. I sew drapes with this machine, and she's made a lot of things with me over the years. I used it when I first got out of high school, and I've made ball dress gowns and party things and medieval attire and curtains and drapes. I've made a little everything on this dressmaker. She remains here because she's a workhorse. I don't get rid of my machines. They stay in the background. I've got some machines that we rescued from the side of the road. They were free to us, and they all work. All of the machines in the house work. The ones out in the garage may or may not work. But all right, so now we have 4 blocks, right? So we don't need the cutting mat anymore. So we can set that aside. I close the blade. So now you can look at the 4 blocks you've made and decide how to put them together. See, I'd like these 2 blue ones to be adjacent. This one has a lot of blue. This one has a lot of blue. That actually doesn't look too bad. Now, these are made with scraps. Now, there's another method to doing these that they call a string quilt, okay? And those you make with strips of fabric that you've cut at like 1.5 inches to about 2 and 2.25 inches, depending on how big a block you want to make. And I have some string blocks made up that need to be made into a quilt. And I think I've shown them before, but I can show that block another day. I'll cut some strips so I have them ready to go. And let's put this block together. So I'm going to take this one and put it on top of this one. And then I'll just put it through the machine, and I'll sew 1/4 inch from the edge, which on this machine is the side of my foot. Did it come unthreaded again? It did. Come on, old girl. You can do it. You can do it. Yes, you can. If you can't do it, no one can. Wasn't that an old cheer? I don't know. And because they're on paper, I can kind of chuck it and get it to be even. All right. Oh, they both have to come off anyway. This is probably really noisy with the sewing machine and all over here. Okay, now, all this paper that's in the seam line, we're going to go ahead and take that off. I'm not going to take all of the paper off, just this little strip that's in the seam. And because it's perforated, it tears off. Do it on both sides of the paper. This is when it's handy to have your trash can nearby. I got a little piece up here. All right, so now the seam is exposed here and here. So what I want you to do, set your stitches with your iron. So I'm going to iron it like it is. All right, then you're going to open the two blocks. So open them up. And we'll work at getting our seam open. So press the side of this seam toward this block and the opposite on the other side. And you can use your fingernail and kind of scratch it down. And you'll be able to tell where you've put them too close together because it'll be really dense. All right, then take it over to your iron and just iron the seam flat, just up and down. And then hold it on there and it's flat. Just don't leave your iron too long because remember you got paper in there. All right, so now you've got a seam that's laying nice and flat like this. Now we have to go, okay? Yes, setting your stitches means they get embedded into the fabric deeper. It sets it down into the fabric. It will less likely warp if you set your stitches with your iron. All right, that's one side. All right, I'm going to set those stitches down in there. Now I'll open those seams up just like I did on the other one. You should have bright colored fabric looking at you when you get your seam open. If you have any that looks kind of dull, it means you've got a fabric pointed in the wrong direction. All right, so that one's all nice and open. I'm going to give it a good press over here. All righty, so now we've got the two seams are pressed open. Let's turn our blocks over so we can see them. And if you're working on a quilt and you forget which way you want them to go, take a picture of it before you start sewing it. And then you can just look on your phone. All right. So now that looks pretty good to me. I'm going to take and put one on top of the other. Make sure your seams are matched up. And when you're sewing it, make sure that this one doesn't curl under when you're going across it. All right, now we're going to sew a 1/4 inch from there. I do have my stitch length set pretty short so that it perforates the paper nicely, so it's easier to remove the paper later. Okay, had a little bit of rolling, not too bad. All right, so I'm going to take the paper off the seam area first. I want to give it a good press. All right, and here's a piece that if you get a pin, you see how that's stuck in there? And you just get your pin and you get the paper. You start working a little bit of the paper with your pin. And you can get that little piece out of there. I say. There we go. The pins can be very helpful when it gets to the itty bitty pieces. There we go. That pulled right out good. Of course, I've got another one that's got a piece of paper kind of stuck. So we'll get the pin out again. Sewing is the only time I use the iron much anymore. I'm not real big on ironing stuff. All right. I'm going to get my seam pressed open. You could use the seam ripper to get the paper started if you wanted to. Use what you have. Use what you have. I'm real big on that these days. Keep thinking I don't need to go shopping. I've got enough around here to keep me busy for at least 60, 70 years or more. Probably never get it all done. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get this pressed open pretty. And then it's up to you. If you want to take your paper out now that you've got a block made, or you can leave your paper in until your top, your quilt top, or whatever's done. The paper does add stability. But now that this is in block form, it's pretty stable. So I'll go ahead and pull this paper and chit-chat with you guys for a little bit. But first I'm going to press this seam flat. Why can I not say seam tonight? I'm going to turn it right side up and give it a good press as well. See if I can get these seams to lay nice and flat. There we go. And voila, I have a little block. Let me get a trash can real quick. So any questions, now would be a good time to ask them if I've missed them or if you've got some new ones, which is entirely possible. Yeah, I don't even need to go shopping anymore. If you're on your edges corners, you can fold the paper and then it rips right off. It's kind of fun to rip the paper off. That's got to go. It's driving me crazy. All right, I'm going to move you back so I can put you on my lap here. Here we go. Thank you, Beth. Yep, Anne's done an upgrade. She's got her a brother machine now. Oh, it's actually a dress. Got it at Kohl's, I think, a couple years ago. I'm kind of warm in it right now. The young man next door needs to do some work on his lawnmower so it stops ripping. You can, if you're ready, Ann, you can rip them out. Unless you're planning to do a bunch of blocks. You could leave it in there until you get them all sewn together if you're planning that. You could do this and maybe add another 2 blocks on, and it would be a nice size for a journal like this. If you sewed 2 more blocks on, this part would be the back part of it. And then that would be like that. That would be like the little journals we made with you, Anne, that time. Ripping the paper out, I think, is very soothing. It would drive my sister-in-law mad, I think. I just think it's cool. Yep. Got leggings on too, but ooh, doggy, it's warm in here. But the boy next door's lawnmower sounds like it barely runs. I told Scott, I said, I think it needs a new spark plug, a new filter, probably needs the blade sharpened. And bless him, he was out there trying to get his lawn mowed before the rain started. And he didn't quite make it. I think he got wet. I think he's younger than our son. They have the little boy next door that doesn't necessarily like going to school every day, and he's got quite the little temper. We can hear him when he's having a bad day when they're trying to get him in the truck to go to school. And yeah, he's putting in his 2 cents worth on how he feels about going to school. It's quite rambunctious and loud, to say it mildly. Scott said he comes by it honest. Gets it from his daddy. Let's see here. Let's see, what did Susan say about frogs? I used to get all froggy to make with a pillow. So it's coming along. Oh, that's cool. Steel. Never seen a steel one. That's really cool. My Aunt Nellie, she was my great aunt. She was my grandfather's sister. She was a quilter. And she had one of the frames up in an upstairs bedroom. I never saw it. I heard about it. I was never allowed to wander in her house. But it was one of the frames that was raised and lowered over the bed. So when she wasn't working on it, she'd pull a rope and she'd pull it up. At least that's what my grandmother told me about it. Like I said, I wasn't allowed to wander in her house. Yeah. I love my Aunt Nellie, but she was very strict. Yeah. Greg made a pot roast yesterday in the slow cooker, and I was telling him how weird it was. You know what? It was really good. He put that roast in the slow cooker with, get this, a stick of butter, so definitely not cardiac friendly, and a bunch of pepperoncinis. Oh my gosh, it's so tender and delicious. We had open roast beef sandwiches for dinner. I didn't want to cook, and the roast was there. I'm sure Greg won't care if we ate it, some of it. There's still some in there. He can't eat it all himself. He gets sick of it before The kid's a good cook. I made him learn to cook because I told him most young women don't know how to cook. So he needs to know how to feed himself and her. So almost done. It's so satisfying when a great big piece pulls off. And I'll give it a nice iron here. I just don't want to pull too hard and stretch it on the bias. That would not be good either. We'd end up with wobbly blocks. All right, so I'm going to give it a good press, and we will have made our patch. And the only thing I did for this big round one is I just put together 4 blocks like this, if I remember right. And then I took a bowl out of the kitchen and brought it in here and turned it upside down and cut around it. So that's how I made this candle mat. So there's the candle mat. And then this is the block we made together. Excuse me, burping. We call it a Mississippi roast. Greg said it was something. I don't remember what he said. He gave it a name. It might have been that. So as you can see, that did nothing to the scraps. So if anybody needs scraps, you need to hit me up. All right. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. And now you know how I put together these basically crumb blocks. And you can do the smaller ones just like Barb Owens did. She put netting over the top and then just did a whole bunch of stitching. You can do that too. Yeah, I keep thinking I just need to get a tub empty and then fill it back up with just these scraps so they're not in a paper bag here on the floor. So you too can do this. And I spent all day hand quilting this. The stitches don't look so great on the back, but on the front, they look okay. And then this is some thrifted pink bias tape. And my idea was to add a channel past this that a drawstring would go in. And this would just draw up and be a basket. But do you see how small that basket would be? So I said, ooh, candle mat. So I need a much bigger circle. So maybe the big pizza pan I had out yesterday would work. I thought about it, but I've got the start to the next whatever I make with it. So I will let you guys go, and I hope that was enjoyable, and I will see you maybe over the weekend. We'll see. All right, y'all, we'll see you later. Bye.